Recording is on.
Hello and welcome to the DXDAO BizDev call for January 23rd, 2022. On the agenda today, we have one member introduction by Wayne. We have a discussion, there's been a meeting and a discussion with Gauntlet about potentially helping sort of like bring liquidity to Swapper. We're speaking to Gnosis Chain about some shared rewards and possibility of incentivizing some of the DXDAO protocols on Gnosis Chain. Quick discussion about like VE tokens and some of the possible applications and implications. And then we'll talk about a bit about the ETH Denver, the event and possible merch, and on the DX Ventures part, we have a couple of updates. So yeah, do you want to get started? Wayne, are you here? Or Melanie, if you want to take over.
So we do have a new member introduction. I'll go ahead and let Wayne take it away if you would like. I think Keenan may have told.
Hello, good evening. Sorry about that. I was busy driving on my way home. I just wanted to say my name is Wayne, obviously, and I'm very excited to be part of this whole journey that you are on in DXDAO. I find DXDAO is basically, as far as I'm concerned, doing great things in the crypto space. And I'm very impressed by everybody. I'm a little bit nervous because I feel like I'm in the company of giants here. And I'm suffering from a little bit of imposter syndrome. But I really hope to help everybody in terms of bringing the message of the work that you are doing in DXDAO out to the community, the immediate community and the community at large. And that's all I have to say, really. I will obviously be reaching out to each of you individually. You'll have to excuse me in the beginning because I will be asking many questions, so I hope you have patience with me. If you don't, I'm not easily, my feelings are not easily offended, so you can tell me to bug off and come back some other time. But that's all I really have to say. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and then just to provide a little bit more color around this, over the past few weeks, we've been searching for a new social media and community growth member to join our DX Voice team. Of the many applicants, as you all have probably seen in the introductions channel, we kind of came to the conclusion and felt as if Wayne would be the best fit for this position. Obviously, we're always looking to welcome new contributors into our community, but we definitely felt that through a trial and through communicating with other contributors in DX Voice that Wayne would definitely be an awesome fit for this role specifically. He did also write a tweet, and you guys can check it out, on the interview that John and Augusto and Chris did with Chris Black. And it's just one of the ways that we felt that he was, he really showed that he would be a great contributor to the community. So we welcome you, Wayne, and we're excited kind of for you to take this journey with us.
Welcome, Wayne.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that very much, actually.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing you around.
It's going to be exciting. I'm really excited. I'm pumped up a lot, actually, to be honest.
Awesome. So welcome and awesome to have you on board. Yeah, all the claps. We have we have the Gauntlet discussion. Sky, I believe you were the call was on Friday evening for me. So
yeah, I can give a overview. It's a pretty interesting situation, and Keenan, who's obviously been instrumental in like Swapper token, like dynamics, and then Zet, product lead for Swapper, and Nathan. I think Nathan, you were there, right? A handful of us had a call, and so Gauntlet actually, obviously, probably a lot of people know Tarun, but Gauntlet does a bunch of things in the space. But one of the things they've been doing most recently, as they've like built these models and things, is they've been working with a whole bunch of like really high profile projects, from Sushi to Compound to Aave to a few others in some other ecosystems. And they have basically, you know, and take built models for analyzing yield farming. And so, okay, if yield farming is happening, some people think yield farming is not sustainable, whatever. But if yield farming is happening and liquidity mining is happening, there's obviously a lot of math. Like, you just look at, like, you know, the regular world, like you can apply major models to all of this stuff to basically improve or improve the efficiency of what's happening in that with that dynamic in the DeFi space. And so in the beginning, you know, yield farming was launched, and it was like a couple guys coming up with what, you know, giving out rewards and seeking liquidity, but there was very little analysis around it. You've now started hearing about DeFi 2.0, which is like smarter yield farming. But even outside of DeFi 2.0, like just regular yield farming, there's ways to like do a lot of optimization. And I think the Swapper and DAO community already have been doing analysis, right? We do not super detailed analysis, but every epoch there are people in the community and members of the team that are looking at performance of pools. You know, a lot of it's based using Excel sheets, like changing around rewards. The tricky thing with Swapper is that, you know, it's not like this is my personal opinion, but it's not like a giant well-oiled machine. It's a great product, but we don't have a whole ton of usage. We don't have a whole ton of pairs. When you compare it to something like Uniswap or SushiSwap or Compound or Aave, those are, like, I would say those are big, giant, like, running machines with lots of things. And so if you take models that that basically are for improving efficiency and optimization, it's one thing when you run optimization models on a big existing machine, and you can tweak to, you know, if you make a small tweak, it can actually make a really big difference. And so they presented, the Gauntlet team, a couple of their business people presented the ability. They reached out. They see, you know, interesting things happening in Swapper. I don't know if they are aware of like the size of Swapper and the like where it is on each chain and the amount of the rewards and things, but they've communicated that they can apply their models to basically help improve the efficiency of Swapper, and Swapper token through and the yield farming that's going on. And so it was a really interesting conversation. Um, there's like obviously a price. They were also open to basically having like if there was an engagement, like having incentives in that engagement. So we you know, Nathan obviously, like always, was pushing the idea of using something like Carrot. They do have some engagements with other counterparties where like there's a base pay for setting this up for the year, and then there's like, depending on the performance and if it achieves the objectives, that they can get the additional pay and stuff as well. But it's a really interesting way to use like probably pretty deep models to tweak and optimize um, something like a yield farming program. I think the outcome was, we did mention a lot of the additional things that could go into a model for DXDAO. Like, we have our own capital that we can put into Swapper that we're only starting to do more and more. Other projects don't really have that. We have Carrot, which is allowing us to put like programmable incentives into our yield farming, which is not something that they necessarily have modeled for other, like SushiSwap, for example. And we can change our swap fee. Balancer is they also work with Balancer. Balancer is the only other project where I think you can easily change the swap fee and optimize that. And so we have a whole bunch of factors which would make their modeling actually really interesting. The outcome of the call was basically I think we kind of all agree there's some outstanding things that are kind of not broken, but like need to be fixed in like the token economics of Swapper, whether you're using it for governance, if you're locking it up. Like the price has obviously been going down and down and down. The financial incentive is less relevant right now. It's more like people want this governance token. And so I think there are a handful of things that we are aware of, like getting in place, and kind of getting Swapper set for the future. And then once you have that, like those things set, because they don't help with like token economics and staking and the other pieces that go along with these systems. They're really just like, once this thing's up and running, they can help optimize. And so that would be really interesting. But I think that that Swapper, system and governance and the token economics, we are thinking about making some changes and getting help with that. And so once we have it up and running and it becomes more of kind of an ongoing running machine, and maybe the guild is governing the rewards and things, and you can lock up for voting power and all that kind of stuff, then once it's up and running, I think optimizing that machine would be more interesting. And so we agreed to, like, yeah, it was awesome to talk with them. We agreed that like in a couple months, maybe as we make progress on these other parts of like establishing the base of what Swapper and Swapper Guild and Swapper Token are, we could revisit like how to optimize within that ecosystem. So that's kind of a big overview. Like that was just a small team that met with them. If there are other people in the community that think, optimizing today makes sense, we could explore it. There's obviously a cost, which is not an insignificant cost, to engaging with someone like Gauntlet. But they have published reports. A couple are public, like SushiSwap, for example, how they've improved the efficiency of their farming programs. And so it is really interesting. And they've gotten positive feedback from people that they've worked with. And so that is an opportunity to engage with them in the future, I think. It's just a matter of like getting the timing right and things. And so if anyone, Zed or Keenan or Nathan, had anything else to add, yeah, please do. Otherwise, if there's any questions or thoughts about it, it would be great to hear them.
Yeah, obviously it's a big decision to be made, and there are costs involved, and we have to weigh in the pros and cons, and it cannot be made by a few people on a call. It has to be a community-wide discussion. So this is probably the early stages of us opening the topic for a wider discussion. At some point, we could have probably Gauntlet put a signal proposal on a public forum, not on chain. It could then move along with snapshot votes, but yeah, it's a really big decision.
Actually, I like kind of agree what they wanted to do, and they basically wanted the key people of Swapper Squad, or people working on the tokenomics and farming, to kind of agree on what they want to do before they want to do any signal proposals. We could do like a signal proposal for us, right, to know what the community wants. But from what I heard, at least it's pretty, at least in my mind, it's pretty obvious we are not in the right moment to do this, and we need to change a couple of things before we could take this step. This is at least from my perspective. It's not the team's perspective. I would not like to see a community discussion about specifically what Gauntlet does. Maybe a community discussion about the tokenomics overall. That's another thing. So that's how I see it.
Yeah, and you and Sky voiced that on the call we had with them, and they kind of agreed it will probably take another quarter until the time is right to properly have this discussion. I believe it's a good time to ask Elan to share something he's planned to share on today's call with the vested escrow tokens, tokenomics.
So this is actually, this ties in like fairly well. This is not just the vested escrow. Like I'll give a bit of background. The first thing is that we had a couple of, I guess more than a month ago, we had a discussion about like Olympus. And then like a week, like 2 weeks ago, I had a discussion with a friend about this, and it was like, no, this is super innovative. And he explained to me the whole thing. And, on the base of it, it's not very complex. They have bonding, right? Like a bond, you sell, I think the definition is that you sell, you guarantee to pay back a loan with some interest. And so they did bonds, but for 14 days, which, it's kind of ridiculous. Like, just for example, like the US Treasury does like bonds for like 5, 10, 30 years, right? You can buy the bonds and you get interest on that bond. And yeah, so this is one thing that I was sort of exploring. I was like, how can you call this a bond when it's for 14 days? And this sort of comes from the fact that, me personally, I want to put money, sort of like liquidity provision for a protocol, and I want to forget about it. I want to look at this in 6 months, in a year. I don't want to move it between farms like all the degens do. And this is exactly the thing that would bring you sort of like mercenary money. As soon as the APY drops in Swapper, then someone is going to move it to somewhere else. And then I dived sort of into this whole like vested escrow tokens, which I don't know if you know, but this is kind of like what happened with Curve, and then with Convex that is on top of Curve. So basically, the more locked Curve you have, the more voting power you have, and then you can decide where the emissions of basically Curve rewards go. And so it becomes like, it's kind of like plutocracy squared, basically, because the more money you have, the more money you can allocate to yourself. It's kind of weird. I don't think this is, like a sustainable governance model or, a scalable governance model, but it is interesting. And I thought maybe to bring this up in the context of Swapper, how can we create, because I think, I don't know if I went like too long and this is like incoherent by now, but how can we sort of incentivize like long-term liquidity provision in Swapper? How can we, like, I want to provide liquidity for Swapper for 2 years and forget about it because I believe in Swapper. I believe in like this long-term thing. And yeah, like how do we figure out how do we like to reward these people who are putting up liquidity for 2 years rather than, I don't know, 3 hours or whatnot. So yeah, this is kind of the framework. Yeah.
One thing that could be done that's kind of very basic would be to create a long-term farming campaign, where it's, and you could do like a locked one. Because you know how Swapper farming, you can support like locked and capped, right? So it is possible to just make like a 2-year farming campaign.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that really addresses like you maybe want some kind of a lockup for the reward tokens or something as well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how to do this, but I went on Twitter, and then some guys from some project like reach out to me, and I'll speak to them. I'll see what's up. They actually create bonds. So whatever I provide liquidity for GNO DXD, and I get a bond. Let's say I lock it for 2 years, and that bond is like an NFT that you could trade on like this bond marketplace, and it represents the liquidity that is in that pool. Let's say I put whatever $10,000 for 2 years, and then when the bond sort of like ends, then you get your money back plus all the interest. So I don't know.
So it's similar. That sounds like similar to like a farming campaign, right? Where you start with your LP tokens, you're locking it in a campaign for a certain amount of time, and then you get something, except that you're saying like you don't get, the difference is maybe instead of with farming, you're continually accruing rewards. This would be you're kind of paid out at a certain date.
Yeah, exactly. And then that position is also liquid.
Yeah,
In
that's the
theory-
other key difference. Like when you stake in our farming campaigns, you don't get a token back.
Yeah. So this is, I mean, this is just like exploring, and I don't know. I mean, we could talk to other projects that are building similar things. And then at the end of the day, like whenever I put those $10,000, I have a bond, and I can sell that. But the advantage the swapper has is that until the end of the period, the liquidity is still there, and sort of like the people who are using swapper are getting like good prices because the liquidity is still locked.
Yeah, Elon, I saw a tweet that you tweeted. I don't know if it was over the weekend or recently. Everyone should be following Elon on Twitter. But it was an interesting point where you were talking about this, where you were like, I'm willing to put capital in for a year or 2 years. And I think that's such a difference between what the space was like a year ago or like a year and a half ago. And I think like when you see the whole curve locking thing, it makes a little bit more sense, because now people really do have confidence of like, yeah, something will be around in a year or 2 years ago. Or 2 years from now. And so I think we can think about how to build financial products for that. That's why I think you were seeing things like the bond emerge. I think John's right, where we can like lean into that with some type of like locked token campaign. I do think we need to like move someplace here with the swapper, like tokenomics, like front here. And we've got like a lot of things up in the air. And I think Gauntlet, it's really cool. I think that Gauntlet like reached out to us. That's kind of like a good inbound that they should be doing. I think it makes sense how their kind of assessment. But I know we have discussions about the single staking for Swapper, and then there's discussions about kind of like doing a buyback for using Swapper fees, and then like maybe the X sushi model or the kind of staking model. So I think we have like a couple things that we're like rolling here, and maybe we should be thinking about like, well, what are the first ones to get things started?
Yeah. So yeah, this is just like something that I was looking into, and because this whole thing, I'll just give it a little bit more background. This whole thing came from, I don't know if people knew, but over the weekend there was like this whole Phantom thing about bringing liquidity into Phantom. And what's interesting compared to like Avalanche or Solana, where they have billions of dollars from like VCs, they pick the projects and they just say, okay, bring your project onto Solana or to Avalanche, and we'll give you like Avalanche rewards, or we'll invest in your project from like the ecosystem fund. And then Phantom did something else. They were like, okay, so at the end of, I think this happened like yesterday, like about 24 hours like earlier from now, like Andre Cronje, which is, I don't know, he's like a famous dev. He's like one of the devs of Phantom and Year and stuff. And he said the top 20 projects, they're going to have the highest TVL in the next, like till that snapshot, which was 24 hours ago, will receive sort of like an NFT. And this NFT will decide how to distribute Phantom rewards across the network, which is interesting because, I mean, certain things happened. The first thing that happened, it was like there's a DAO that all it does is you deposit like certain assets, so it grows in TVL, and then it gives you its token, so you can like vote for stuff, and be a part of these 20 projects. And then a DAO came, and it's called 0x DAO, and it vampired attacked the first one. And then they reached like $2 billion in TVL within like 2 hours, which is just crazy. So yeah, like just like this whole liquidity wars and stuff, it's very interesting, like on the different incentives that you could do to bring sort of capital. I mean, this is short term, but then the question is, how do you incentivize them to stay long term and be a part of the project? Yeah. I don't know if anyone else has any other comments about this.
I think we should be on top of all these developments. We've been kind of, I would say, viewed as this slow DAO. That, I mean, obviously we were early on the forking idea of Uniswap, but when we managed to fork and build our own thing, it was too late, and farming was too late, and everything we did is basically just like a couple of months too late, and we didn't have the momentum. I think we should be on top of these kind of things, and especially tokenomics. Now we do have 2 different tokens that is suffering a little bit. I mean, DXD is doing much better, obviously, and we shouldn't think much about price, but obviously there is this where Swapper at least is hurting, and something's not right. We need to like we need to look at it and see what it is. I'm looking for a change in tokenomics and how we distribute and how we lock up the token. I think Venki prepared some stuff even before we started talking about the VE model. We already looked at the VE model, and I think that together with maybe bonding or even some other ideas that we are talking about is a potential like 10-step forward that we need to take and be a little bit in time with what tokenomics should be. And maybe obviously DXDAO has a lot of assets we can use, and we should be smart of how we could use that. But I think this Friday at least there will be a presentation from Swapper Squad. We'll talk a little bit about potential changes in tokenomics, about some ideas we have, and we'll try to bring up these kind of things.
Yeah, sounds good. I'm exploring this area, and I'm exploring like, I don't know, different, because there are like sort of like DeFi protocols that are helping projects, do these things. So exploring, talking to these guys as well, and seeing if any of them might make sense to sort of like help.
Super cool. I mean, you can involve me if you want, or anyone else, but I'm super interested in this.
In general, I think this is super cool, and I mean, there are interesting stuff happening. I think just the whole vested escrow model for everything, like Curve does, I think it's, they say that, the legacy system is sort of like plutocracy, or in whatever the US is an oligopoly, right? And then these systems are like, they're just doubling down on that. It's, if you have money, then you're able to stake, and if you allocate rewards to yourselves. And I don't think this is very good, like overall. And I still think, a system that combines something like that with non-transferable voting power, like voting power that you need to earn, is probably the way to go. But I think we need to experiment with things. So that's kind of that. I don't know if anyone has any other comments, or I don't know, maybe we can dedicate some time for this.
I think it's good to look at this and create, finding like where the innovation is that can help create good alignment over the long term without getting caught up in, I think obviously a lot of what is going on is sort of this death spiral of Ponzi-nomics, right? Kind of with people
100%.
like Kanye and Sesta and those guys, kind of like that's their jam, right? That's what they do. And a bear market is not good for their business, right? So they're sort of just, let's add more and more letters in front of our tokens or whatever, right? But I think there are some fundamental things that are in there that are good, right? And like that we can, as long as we try to keep our heads on straight, like we got to figure out how to find good alignment. And I think even beyond just individuals, I think one of the things that is an opportunity for DXDAO is hopefully providing a suite of products to new communities that come online. Like I think that's one of the hopes with like the esports team, the Copenhagen Flames, that we might be able to experiment with, communities that are actually like just internet native communities, not necessarily just, crypto degens from the last hype cycle, but actually people that could find some real use case with crypto. Like if we can offer a suite of tools to them, finding ways to align things over the long term will help with that as well, right? Like imagine a new token for governing esports teams is like launched on Aqua finds liquidity on Swapper, uses Carrot for like incentives, and DXGov to like govern everything, right? Like then, having a good way to incentivize and align like people around providing liquidity on Swapper for these like new communities, like that could be really important in the future.
Yeah, and I think it's not about the token price, right? Like many of these things, like all they care is like to Ponzi-fy their token and just make it go up. I don't think this is the goal here. The goal is to create like something sustainable. I think this is what DXDAO does well. It's not about this short-term token spike. It's what something like long-term and sustainable. So yeah, that's that. If there are no other comments, maybe we can move on to sort of the discussion with Gnosis Chain.
Oh, it's pretty much the same thing, because ever since the Gnosis Chain Innovation DAO had meeting with representatives from Gnosis, and they kind of like pumped the brakes on liquidity mining incentives and said focus should be solely on users and interoperability. And now, initially there was kind of a dissatisfaction that they Gnosis are testing the waters with just giving the DAO 100 GNO, which is at the time was about $40,000-$50,000. I don't know what it's worth now. And everybody was like, what are we going to do with this little amount of money? And Gnosis was saying, well, prove to us that you're going to utilize it the way we want to see it utilized, and then we'll give you more. But now, ever since that meeting, that money has been sitting in there, and no one's even come up with a proposal to utilize it, which kind of like shows everyone that liquidity mining incentives is all we know. And is it a problem of DeFi, or the fact that the overall ecosystem has only been kind of like revolving around DeFi, and there's nothing else apart from, opportunistically shifting liquidity from farm to farm and maximizing APY, and there's nothing more to it. It's like Gnosis are trying to reinvent crypto and making it more than what it is at the moment, which is mostly DeFi, but there aren't that many innovative protocols and interesting solutions that would allow for users to stick around and use multiple dApps on a single network. This is something that yet to be created as a whole new ecosystem, and the question is, what do we do like meanwhile? So the money is still there. How do we utilize that money to achieve that goal with just having the current infrastructure? So, it begs the question, do we need to brainstorm and start thinking of new, brand new protocols not conceived of up until this point? Or do we still, try to think of ways to shift money in the current infrastructure and the current protocols and in between the current dApps? So yeah. One question would be, is there a difference between incentivizing liquidity in a farm that only takes a couple of months and doing the same thing, but locking that liquidity for, say, 2 years? Would that be perceived by Gnosis as something different? Would they say yes to a proposal like that? I mean, the only way for us to find out is if we try. But
so this is actually, Nathan, this is a very interesting angle. Like, I guess this is sort of like my spiel, right? But like, we can come to Gnosis and say, like, we want to, have a long-term collaboration. Let's create liquidity incentives for 2 years. I mean, you can have like, the minimal one is like 1 year, the big one is 2 years, and then maybe the biggest one is 3 years. And this really aligns the incentives of basically DXDAO and Gnosis Chain, and it gives you sort of, I don't know, the outlook that we're all bullish on the long-term outlook of this collaboration.
Yeah, I just feel like even if we somehow improve on the tokenomics, although on one hand, when you're in quicksand, the more you move, the deeper you sink. So you don't really need to change that often. Those that change stuff often, they may, ride a certain wave short term, but that wave's gonna crash into the sand and like it will be no more. So, and I don't think we need to like reinvent the wheel when it comes to DeFi. We could probably focus on what John said and, go before Gnosis and ask them for a grant to help us build this operating system to allow sports fans, esports fans from all over the world to come over to Gnosis and use our dApps, because we have Aqua, we have Swapper, we have DXVote, we have Carrot. All of these four can converge into one operating system. And this is something I believe Gnosis could easily stand behind and support us with as much funds as we need. And it's something that no one else already has. We have these teams that are just single purpose, single product teams. None of them some of them could be trying to become a decentralized DAO, but at the end of the day, they're just a single dApp with a single purpose. Whereas DXDAO, we're DAO first, and we're building this ecosystem, and we have this portfolio of dApps that we could utilize, as John said. So I believe we have an advantage over anyone else on Gnosis chain, even in crypto.
Yeah. So Nathan, what you described there, that ecosystem which DXDAO wants to build, right? And we are building, but we're building some pieces of it. And that will, depending on where we build that ecosystem, if that's on Gnosis chain, then that would likely bring people to Gnosis chain. That could be on a layer 2, but we want to build that, like, and as Ross is pointing out, like, the thing that's holding us back from achieving the mission that DXDAO has and the vision is not a grant from Gnosis. Like, having a grant from Gnosis to help us do that that would change nothing. We already have the money. What we need is, if anything, we need their auditors, or we need their devs, or we need some of their people. Like, they have a massive team of people. We would want help from them. They have built some of the frameworks and some of the products from the past that we have, and it's really like the resources, the actual people resources, that could benefit the DXDAO community more than like any amount of grant. Like, even if they give us a $3 million grant to like build this vision, which we already are building, maybe that would help us. That would like make it that could help us lean towards doing it on Gnosis chain instead of another chain. But maybe we don't need that grant. We might not want to be beholden to a grant like that. We just need to build what we already know this vision is. So that's partly why that $40,000 sitting in that innovation DAO. Like, if anyone in the community, in the Gnosis chain community or in the DXDAO community, has like a one-off idea for like using that money to maybe bring users to Gnosis chain. And so one idea that we talked about in the chat around ETH Denver was like the way 1inch gave out like physical tokens, which you could claim at ETH Lisbon. What if we gave out, 7,000 tokens at ETH Denver, and on those physical tokens were Carrot tokens, and all 7,000 people would have to come to Carrot on Gnosis Chain. And so like Gnosis Chain would all of a sudden get 6,000 new users. Carrot would get 7,000 new people discovering Carrot. Then you would give them this carrot. And the question is, what do we want that carrot to be? What do we want those 7,000 people to actually have incentive to do? And so we need to, come up with something there. But that's like one way to, I mean, we could get, some of that $40,000 of GNO. We could use some of our own money. We could use, if depending on what the incentive was. One idea was to like have a good donation target on like Giveth, for example. If during ETH Denver week people gave $30,000 on Giveth to different communities, then that the carrot like is basically fulfilled, and people could claim their carrot collateral. And so we could team up with Gnosis, we could team up with Giveth, we could team up with, use some of our own money, and we could that would be like it's a marketing expense, but it would get 7,000 people to Carrot, and it could get 7,000 or roughly 7,000 people to Gnosis Chain. So that's one idea that we were throwing around. But that's the kind of thing that, it sounds like Gnosis, at least leadership, wants, is like users, new people discovering Gnosis, people that have used Ethereum blockchain, or maybe a lot of people at ETH Denver have never used blockchains. And so that would be new people coming to Gnosis Chain and to Carrot, a DXDAO product, which would be an interesting idea, I think.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I've had too much tea today, but even if you're in a way saying we should keep grinding on our own, what I took from what you just said was asking Gnosis for 3 million, and let's do that. And I don't think, Ross is saying in the chat, we kind of like doing well on our own, but I don't think I think that's fear. I think we are a little scared. We should go for it. We should really have a proper chat with them and think of, scaling up, because that's what this money is for. They have like 400,000 GNO dedicated for growing the ecosystem. And if we have a bunch of like literally 24 of protocols, and not a single one of them is ready with a proposal to ask for anything, it's like, is everyone just non-creative, or they don't have confidence in themselves? Like this is money for us. It's money dedicated to the protocols building on Gnosis, and we have this amazing idea, and we have most of the dApps and protocols already built and running. We just need to cross the finish line, and we won't be indebted to anyone. So
the thing
the money could go a long way with hackathons and attracting devs, hiring new devs, instead of being scared, before our stakeholders spending more money. We can have all of this money utilized to attract new devs and spend on the cost for building this without spending any money from our treasury.
The things that are jumping out to me from what I'm hearing here is that Gnosis wants to spend money on things that they think will bring new users, not in like the old yield farming games, which, I mean, I think especially with the way the market is going, it's maybe, that time has passed and maybe makes sense. And so, I like that. The thing that pops to my mind is like, if we can bring new people to the ecosystem, like an esports team or whatever, like going to Gnosis and asking them to help like match incentives or that kind of thing might be a good play. I mean, I like what Sky said about ETH Denver as something that we could do like right now, right? I don't know what else we could do right now. So it sounds like Dave knows some things.
Well, Dave, you're mentioning redo a proposal specific on Swapper. Like, there's already a proposal. It's on their forum. they had people that said, why would we do this? And so if Martin Koppelman also is like, well, that's not that interesting. And so they wanted, like, Martin Koppelman saying, let's do like, okay, we want to give you money. Let's do like come up with like a proposal that like is going to achieve some of the goals that Gnosis DAO wants, like users and stuff. If this Marcelo guy who works for the internal hedge fund or whatever, like if he's saying let's give rewards to get a big DXD GNO pool, like let's do that too. But like that's already there. It's in their forum. If we have to add more to make it more interesting to Gnosis DAO, yeah, let's do that too. And then what Nathan's saying is if we have this like big plan, like we're going to do this awesome ecosystem and we need $3 million to like build this ecosystem, are they going to give us devs too? Like $3 million is great, but we already have $3 million. How do we get devs to help us build it faster? Like we can also do that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I met up with Marcelo this week just to give some context, and I mean, he's pretty much. I mean, he works on the Gnosis DAO treasury, but he's also the guy responsible for the allocation of GNO rewards on Gnosis chain. So he's pretty much calling the shots on the whole GNO reward allocation. And I think, well, he also expressed, I would say, like,
decentralized.
Sorry.
I said it sounds decentralized.
Yeah.
Well, he's like proposing it, but the Gnosis DAO is going to vote on these things. So but his Martin Koppelman's voice, his voice matters a lot. Like if he knows what they want and we have it, let's do it.
Yeah, and well, he suggested, for example, doing a GNO DXDAO GNO DXD pool, and also expressed some. Well, he also said, he wasn't happy with how that the swap thing didn't go through, even though, I mean, I know he was also questioning the value of it on the forum. But, I made a Telegram group this morning with a couple of guys. So I think, maybe chatting with him directly and then seeing what we can readdress in the forum might be the best way to move forward. But from what I took away, they were quite keen on, extending some of GNO rewards to DXDAO protocols to, of course, they say attract users, which I guess can be interpreted in a lot of ways. But, I guess it's definitely worth to have a chat with him directly and see what maybe was missing from their side and see how we can address that. For the esports thing, I mean, I'm very bullish on that. Of course, I think we're a tad out of actually launching like live governance, given that we want DXVolt to be in a better situation. I had a chat with Stefan about that. He was quite excited about it. Maybe it's something we can address later at a later stage. I don't know if we necessarily need them, but I think there could also be some cool advantages. For example, maybe they'll have a faucet or something, right, to help onboard esport fans so they don't need to. I think there's a lot of stuff to be done, but I don't know if now is the right time to start thinking about these things, given that we're not ready to launch until probably another 5-6 months or so.
Yeah, I want to say maybe something general here. I mean, I'm all for like joining and working with Gnosis on certain things. And I think like, obviously we can, in theory, we have a large enough treasury that we can do anything we want really alone, but it's going to be a lot more difficult. And I think this is like one of the nicest thing about, this entire ecosystem is that you can build on what other people have built, or you can, integrate what they've done and sort of like complement each other. So I guess with Gnosis, there are certain things that we compete on, but there are also a lot of things that we can complement on. And yeah, if we're using Gnosis chain, like, I don't know, ideally we should have some of the best performing apps with the highest TVLs and the highest volumes and stuff like that. And, they should also help reward our users. So that's kind of like, I don't know, my 2 cents.
Yeah, and I mean, potentially, we also briefly spoke about the possibility of doing a DXD GNO exchange between the DAOs, which could help align interest for both sides in the long term, right? So if they held some amount of DXD, of course, in their treasury, they'd be incentivized to, see DXD succeed and help achieve that. And the same for us, But it's just, something we talked about. And of course, it's also a more complex thing to do, considering, DXD trading way below NAV, etc. But that's also an option that's on the table. And I think that's a very interesting option we should pursue, not only with Gnosis, but in general with other DAOs or teams we're really excited about. I think large OTC DXD to whatever their token is could be a great way, to diversify the treasury and also show support for other projects and, acquire some tokens like that. But of course, it's challenging to do when, given the current price of DXD. And I mean, general market conditions right now probably don't make that a big priority or very attractive thing. But I think in the long term, that's a very interesting way to, align interest with other projects and, do a token trade.
Yeah, I mean, these token swaps we've talked about these for a while. The main issue has always been every community thinks that their own token is undervalued. And so in order to get these things done, even if your token is undervalued and the other project thinks their token is undervalued, you basically both have to basically put that aside and say, even though we know we're getting a bad financial deal from this, and because our token is so undervalued, we're going to do this token swap just as part of
well, if we agree that they are both equally undervalued, it may work out. But I think actually with GNO, it's actually they're in a similar situation to DXD in terms of relationship to the asset value and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we had a token swap opportunity with them in the past that was small to get something started, and it didn't. We couldn't reach consensus that it was appropriate to do. And DXD, I guess, is a little in a slightly better position now. Maybe not today, but it's almost like it's not like you're releasing to this market and anyone's gonna dump it. Probably, I mean, people have the opportunity to, but it's really to align interest more than currently.
Yeah, I think the last time that conversation was broached, it was also around like the Omen split, and there was, I think, some disagreement around there. And I think there's maybe clearer opportunities for collaboration with Gnosis Chain, CowSwap, et cetera. So it might be, I think it's probably worth revisiting. And yeah, I know it is kind of an old topic, but I mean, I also think it's the kind of thing where if Gnosis DAO and DXDAO did a token swap, I think in all likelihood, barring some kind of really catastrophic market movements, it's the type of thing where neither DAO would ever sell those tokens, right?
Yeah. And I think, I mean, that's what it's supposed to be, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, in this proposed idea, though, with like a DXD GNO pair on Swapper, the part of that a token swap would probably be to include, maybe both use that as liquidity in that type of pair on Swapper. That would be probably a win-win also. Yeah, it would be. We talked about having the feature where we could do that in a trustless manner, where we put in the DXD side, they put in GNO, and we actually split the LP tokens on that, and that's something we could use for a few different other projects as well. And we've been talking about that feature for a year now, and we still don't have it. But
the main thing with, yeah, I mean, there's the feature of like the double style or whatever, right? Like we don't have the trustless matching of liquidity, right? But I mean, if there was a good use case, it could be, we are building like a relayer right now to trade on Swapper. If we were like, oh, we really want to do this type of thing, and we have a great example of why we want to do it, we could prioritize that as well. But I think also the blocker on DXD liquidity is the whole below NAV thing, and the pushback from DXD holders that like, hey, I mean, it doesn't make sense to be selling, market making DXD at current price levels relative to asset value.
Yeah. So I don't know. Does anyone else have anything else they want to talk about? I think we're just a bit over time. Do we want to mention anything about ETH Denver? I heard it's going to be crap.
Telling yourself that now, that's good cope.
It is exactly what I'm doing. I'm just
yeah, I
coping.
guess the most important thing, and obviously John is probably going to make this video, but there's been some good agreement on a set of bounties, which is an important part of ETH Denver. We'll have that video made to explain what the bounties are and some writing about it. Get that to ETH Denver team. They share that. Yeah, we can't share these publicly yet, so we've been mentioning to people we're having about bounties at ETH Denver, and we can mention that we're going to be there and we have bounties. We just can't say what they are, like publicly anything, but we could start a tweet or social media, just to let hackers and try to like link ourselves heavily with ETH Denver. ETH Denver is tweeting about ETH Denver every day, right? And so we start to like somehow, stand out in that conversation would be cool. Just so people, when they get there, they're like, oh yeah, DXDAO's got bounties too. And then like having a plan for how to engage with as many people at ETH Denver as possible, especially devs and young people. And then if we do think this idea of handing out carrot tokens, I mean, we don't have to have 7,000. We could have 200 carrot tokens, come up with some budget for this. But I think trying to get the question is, what do we want that carrot to be? But handing out physical carrots and physical carrots that they can, and then digital carrots that they can go claim from carrot, and then try to achieve that incentive would be a really cool in real life experiment. But we need some, more concrete idea for what we'd want like a carrot incentive to be. I don't think it's like DXD price or something. I think we want some action that people can take. But it will get people aware of carrot if we're handing out free carrot tokens for sure.
Would it be crazy to do the carrot around like the number of bounty submissions we get?
The only problem with that might get spammy, or like.
Yeah, but I mean, that's not a bad thing, right?
like what would be a good target, you think? Like 50? A range? 10 to 50?
Yeah, we'd have to look. I need to go back and look at the size of the, because I know this is going to be a relatively big hackathon, so I think we maybe need to go dig up what the numbers are.
Yeah, so you'd mainly give those carrots to like dev hackers that are hacking.
Yeah, although I think in theory, like one of the cool things is you could give it to non-hackers, right? And then they're sort of incentivized to try to like get hackers to do it.
Yeah, number of submissions. We could do a couple different ones. That's a good idea. If anyone has any other carrot ETH Denver ideas, share them in the carrot channel.
All right. So I think that's it. Yeah. I don't know. Feel free to. I don't know. This guy maybe wants